Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Stitcher, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is the author of Breathe, Baby, Breathe. Her name is Amanda Lynch. Before Amanda joins us, I want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Vooks, V-O-O-K-S, Vooks, Vooks.com. Books combines the love, trust, and safety of children's books with the convenience of online streaming for a whole new way to experience stories with their growing library of animated storybooks that both kids and parents will love. By adding movement, sound, narration to existing books, Books bring stories to life, encouraging the love of reading while promoting literacy, imagination, and focus for children ages 2 to 8 years old. With Books, children can learn, laugh, and let their imagination soar, while parents can feel good about letting their little ones enjoy quality, guilt-free screen time. Right now, Books is offering a free 1-year subscription to every single teacher and homeschooling parent. We also have resources to go along with some of our most beloved titles. To learn more, go to Vooks.com. That's V-O-O-K-S.com, Vooks.com. Joining us on the line right now from the beautiful city of Richmond in Virginia. She is the author of a great new book called Breathe, Baby, Breathe. Please welcome to the show, Amanda Lynch. Amanda, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm pretty wonderful. I'm really excited that you're on the show, and I'm really excited to hear what Breathe, Baby, Breathe is all about.
So I worked as a preschool through 12th grade special education teacher for about 20 years. Most of my work was done working with children who had been exposed to a great deal of domestic or community violence, sometimes both. And so just in having to find some self-care for myself, I started to get really interested in mindfulness and in yoga, and in seeing the impact that those two practices had on myself and also on my children at home. I thought, wow, this would be really awesome if I could turn my work into a children's book. And so last summer I released a book called The Mindfulness Room, which is for students, mid to upper elementary school. But I found that a lot of parents were asking, well, what do we do with our toddler? Or, how early can we introduce these strategies? And so from that, Breathe, Baby, Breathe was born. It's an ABC book. So there are strategies associated with each letter of the alphabet. There's also a little bit of talk about brain science, and how we can explain that to younger children, why they may flip their lid, for example, when they're frustrated. So, those kinds of things are touched upon as well. But I really wanted to create a board book or a book just for kids that were newborns to, 6 years old.
What a great great idea for a book, and what a great story. I can relate to it in a lot of ways. You were a special education teacher dealing with kids who had experienced abuse and violence and trauma in their lives, and at 20 years, that's a whole lot, and it's a whole lot of trauma in your life. And you chose yoga. I was in human services myself. We've talked about this on the show in the past. I was dealing in the juvenile justice system here in Massachusetts, and I did it for about 10 years, and that was really stressful. But I didn't find yoga. Instead, I became a professional clown. It worked for me, but it won't. I don't think it will work for everyone. Yoga is a much more practical way to deal with that. So where did you get, I guess that was one of the, just kind of a great place to jump off. I mean, I was making a joke about it, but to be honest with you, back when I left human services, the idea of, self-healing through yoga that just, it wasn't on my radar, and I don't think it was on many people's radars at that time. How did you kind of get introduced to yoga?
Well, I guess maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I just started taking vinyasa yoga, really at a local gym. It was just a class offering. I thought, oh, this, has to be easier than Zumba, which it was not. And so that's sort of how I kind of fell into yoga. I started to get very serious about Baptiste yoga and restorative yoga about a year and a half ago. I ended up being given a year membership to a local studio because of the work that I do in the community. And then ended up going through their yoga teacher training program. And so now I teach at the same studio, restorative yoga and also meditation. I feel like I always had a pretty active meditation life. I like to be outside and do sort of like walking meditations and that kind of thing. And so being able, because I also am a mom of 4 kids, so really just looking for something for myself to reduce my own stress, but also to help me make commitments to myself, and seeing that, okay, if this could work for me, maybe it could work with the kids that I service at school. And really just rolled it out from there. The principal that I had, I said, do you think you have space for me to have a mindfulness room? And she's like, well, what's that? And so,
of course she did.
Once I explained the concept of what I wanted to do, with having kids come in and really learning how to meditate and breathe and having access to different supports that they could also take in the classroom, it just kind of took off and, took a life of its own from there.
That's wonderful. There's so much I want to talk to you about. At some point, remind me, I definitely want to ask you about the different types of yoga. Because I think a lot of us hear the word yoga and we just think of wrapping ourselves up like with the pretzel.
Right.
But there's very different types of yoga. But before we do that, I want to share, it sounds like you worked with inner city kids or in a big system.
Absolutely.
I had a guest who started an interview for the podcast. I feel really bad. He came on and he wanted to talk about a book about mindfulness with kids, and he said, I just envision, kids sitting down at the lunchroom table in schools and meditating. And I said to him, in all seriousness, I said, I've been in literally thousands of lunchrooms all around the country. I can't imagine anybody trying to meditate any of those. How would you propose that happen? And I, like I said, I felt bad because he goes, oh, I guess my concept is wrong. Okay, well, thank you anyways. And he hung up.
Oh, no.
But I mean, it brings up a serious question. My wife's been a teacher in the Boston system for 33 years. And, finding a place that is quiet and restful and a place where you can become mindful in a lot of schools that can be a challenge.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And not everybody has space where they can say, okay, we have an empty classroom. So we can give you a whole classroom to use, and kids come to you as needed, or because you're doing small group social emotional support for them. Realistically, most schools don't have that space. And so another part of what I do, or, both in my personal and professional lives, is help teachers develop their own mindful practices, so that they can find ways that they can embed those things into their own classrooms. So it might be a corner. It might be having a bucket called an amygdala first aid kit or a mindfulness kit where it has fidgets or different things to reach and help students connect with their 5 senses for students that might need to be grounded a little bit when they're feeling anxious or feeling that they're going to slip their lid. It could also be having Velcro underneath a student's desk where they can run their hand underneath it, because that's a tip and strategy that helps them to stay focused. Finding an opportunity for kids to move. So, meditation doesn't have to be just sitting down crisscross applesauce. There are plenty of ways to meditate with walking, with focusing on your footsteps and how your feet feel when they touch the grass, or the sensation of the bottom of the, soles of your shoe, or, those kinds of things too. And I call that like dinosaur, walking like a dinosaur. I've even had kids that are like not crab walking, but kind of walking across the room, kind of like Spider-Man. That's a different type of way to do walking meditation. And so really when we're talking about mindfulness, we just want students to be able to focus in that present moment and not think about what's going on at home or what happened on the bus or what happened in the cafeteria. And so allowing teachers to also have some control and feel empowered by bringing their own practice into class is something that I hope staff finds with my book as well.
You know, I have to tell you, I am fascinated. I am absolutely delighted here listening to you, because I think one of the things, there are a couple of things that your comments bring up. I think a lot of teachers, when they hear the word mindfulness, you know, and even, you know, people who aren't teaching, they think, woo-woo out there, hippie stuff. But what you're talking about actually is just helping kids focus, shut off the brain that's running 1,000 miles an hour, which we all experience, and just focus on now. And sometimes when an adult, when anybody is kind of flipped out and they're worried about the bills, they're worried about, you know, what are the kids thinking about me? Will she go to the dance with me? When we're just kind of going over it on those loops, you know, we can just lose control. And if we can shut those off by doing something as simple as reaching underneath our desk and feeling some Velcro.
Exactly.
That's like a miracle.
Exactly. And a lot of those things I learned, I taught students with autism for a while. I also taught students in juvenile corrections. And so we didn't have the opportunity to, you know, go for a walk in the park. And so being able to even visualize with them while they're seated, what does it feel like to be at the beach, because you're confined to this space. And just because your body's here doesn't mean your mind has to be. And so helping students even just realize those things. But it all really starts with the staff. You know, and parents. I can, you know, give you 26 strategies and all the brain science in the world, but if you're dysregulated as an adult, it's no way you're going to regulate a classroom of kids or even your kids at home. And so, you know, I was finding that I have a 3, 5, 13, and 20-year-old. And so I was finding with my own kids that, especially with my youngest child, because she's the baby, she's still kind of going through the terrific 2s and 3s. I was getting really frustrated, but she just couldn't communicate what she needed. And so if I wasn't in the space that I'm in, you know, I'd be screaming and yelling, she'd be crying, nothing would be getting accomplished, versus me saying, I'm just trying to help you. Let's reset by taking a deep breath. You know.
Yeah. Such simple wisdom, but sometimes the simplest wisdom is the most profound and is the most helpful. My kids aren't 3 to 25. And bless you. I mean, talk about someone who needs yoga and being mindful.
Absolutely.
You know, I recall my kids are now 23 and 26, and I remember times when my son, especially in middle school, what a surprise, a boy in middle school has issues. You know, there were times when we would just get in these loops, and at one point I just found myself, I'm like, we are arguing about the same thing. Right. You know, that we've been arguing about for a year, and it has nothing to do with the fact that you didn't do the dishes right now. And so we just, one of the things that helped was just, I said, tomorrow night, we're just going to take time and you bring all of your issues up. Just bring all of them up. We'll talk it all through, and then we'll dispense with them. We'll solve them, and then we don't have to deal with it again. And it was just that moment of taking a time and stopping and listening to him, and also listening, you know, and it's important for us and for him to listen to himself.
Exactly.
And to hear what his issues were. Wow. One of the things, tell me if you experience this as a teacher, this is really needed right now in schools, because a lot of parents don't understand that the federal government issued, you know, they want to stop this school to prison pipeline that they're seeing. Kids, you know, who are constantly being suspended or sent out of the classroom. And so they said, well, no more of that. You can't suspend, and it's being implemented in different places. But I know in a lot of school districts, it's like if you're in elementary school, you can't be suspended for any reason. And middle school is different and whatever. But they make these edicts, but they don't offer solutions.
Right.
This is a perfect solution.
Mm-hmm. And it's very frustrating as a teacher when you have a 6-year-old that's, throwing desk or ripping down all your bulletin boards or, not able to communicate in a healthy way with what's really going on. And so they're kind of flipping out and then they leave and then they're brought back. Mm-hmm. And so it's very frustrating because I think sometimes we can get into like a consequence-focused mindset. Mm-hmm. And so, well, in the real world, you won't be able to do that at work. Okay, but he's 6. Mm-hmm. And so until we really start putting some money and probably legislation as well behind some programs like mindfulness and restorative justice, I don't think that teachers will really be able to get the support to enforce some of these policies in a way where it's received the way that it should be. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if I'm clear with saying it, so that it won't be the teacher feeling as if, they're frustrated, they're not being heard, because then you also have a mass exodus of teachers. Mm-hmm. And so that the teachers are really getting the support that they need as well to be able to use these strategies with students to understand that, being suspended, we don't know what we're suspending kids and sending them home to, right? And so, like, if little Amanda is upset because she's being abused at home or there's no food at home or no heat or electricity, and then she's home for 5 days, like, have we really accomplished what we've set out to accomplish? And, like, the whole point of being a student is really to, like, discipline should be about learning and not so much about being penalized or, punitive in nature. Mm-hmm. But it's very difficult for people to have that mindset shift when they don't feel supported. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mentioned my wife's been a teacher for 30 years. You can imagine how many different curriculum she's had and how many different discipline strategies she's had.
And it's like, this is just one more thing, right? And then next year we'll be doing something different.
Yeah, but one of the things that I love about your approach is that it's not some people might call it a touchy-feely kind of thing, but I don't think that you approached it from that. You actually looked into the brain science of this. Right. Mm-hmm. And there is a lot of brain science. There's still so much we don't know about the brain, but there's a lot that we do know about the brain. Right. And we can make changes with our kids. We hear about kids with ADHD, and a lot of those kids are just give them a pill, give them a pill, give them a pill. And those are incredibly, incredibly powerful psychotropic drugs. And we don't know the long-term effects that a lot of those drugs are having on our kids. And meanwhile, there are ways that we can use exercise and mindfulness and yoga and meditation to help those kids with attention issues succeed in life and in school.
Absolutely. I mean, there's, thousands upon thousands, I'm sure, of articles about what meditation does for the brain, how it helps to reduce cortisol, how it helps to reduce or increase serotonin, to reduce adrenaline, and to help kids not be stuck in that area of their brain where it's fight, flight, freeze, or submit, where they're actually able to communicate what's going on in a healthy way, because we're empowering kids with the tools that they need for their toolkits. But not just kids, it's also empowering teachers. Mm-hmm. I know my mornings are crazy. I have 3 kids that are still home to get out the door. And so by 7 o'clock, I'm probably already frustrated, right? And so if I've started my day with meditation, even if it's just 10 minutes or even a 10-minute walk up and down my driveway, I've already retrain my brain to be in a certain space when I'm faced with someone who's cut me off in traffic. It's like, hey guy, no big deal, and so, it's really a way where it's, low cost because you're breathing, it's your body, and low prep. It's not a lot of preparation that goes into teaching someone how to belly breathe. And so I think that when I've done workshops with staff, I've spent probably the first 6-12 months really just focusing on them building their own practice.
Right.
before we even talk about what this does in the classroom. It's really just, let me give this gift to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's also like, I had a workshop last year where our local SPCA brought a dog in for the staff to play with for 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That was our whole workshop.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't bring this data. It wasn't let's talk about the parents you didn't call. It was just, let's play with this puppy
Mm-hmm.
and go home. You know, it really just is investing in the wellness and health of the staff as well.
And that's so important because, folks, you have no idea how stressful a teacher's job is, and
Right.
how much goes on. You know, some people joke about teachers, you know, that they have the summers off, they work 5 hours. Well, when they go home, they're thinking about their kids.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and they're worried about their kids. And they know, especially, and I was going to say, especially in the inner city, I've encountered, I performed in schools in inner cities and very rural communities. Amanda and I was just talking about one of them before we started recording. And there's abuse and trauma in every one of those schools.
Everywhere.
And every one of those teachers are going home thinking about those kids and worrying about those kids and stressing about those kids. So, so important. Tell me, Amanda, I don't know if you feel this, but, you know, a lot of people have finally gotten around to understanding that, hey, I need to take care of this body. It's the only one I have, so I should probably exercise a little bit. I should probably eat, you know, be mindful of what I'm eating and not just, you know, throw down whatever I'm, you know, whatever I think about eating. Do you think we're getting close to the time where people understand that, hey, I only have this one brain and I need to take care of it, and I can take care of it?
Right. Right. I think so. And I think for a while, you know, because society has changed so much, kids don't get the outside time that they get. A lot of times they're overscheduled or they're playing video games. And so, you know, we were seeing before legislation came about that changed, and required schools to have different, types of food for lunch. Kids weren't really eating as healthy as they might. You know, fresh fruit and vegetables weren't available in every community in the way it is now. So I think with a lot of those conversations, things have shifted. But I think people also are recognizing the importance of being well-rounded and having a more balanced approach to life. Not just focusing on work, making sure you're getting enough sleep. Because a lot of things get diagnosed when you may not even have ADHD. It might be lack of sleep or lack of proper nutrition, which is causing anxiety, you know. And so I think that there's definitely been a push to be more conscientious about what we're putting into our bodies, but also having kids understand why it's important to put fruits and vegetables and drinking enough water and like what that does to your body as well.
Yeah. And, you know, I was talking to an educator the other day about how a lot of times we kind of do things backwards, and we introduce really tough, challenging concepts to kids when they're in high school without any foundation. And, you know, when our kids get to high school and now they're faced with pressure to vape or to smoke or to get involved with drugs or other risky behaviors, we expect them, you know, to begin to think about those things when they're 12 and 13 years old. When in reality, if we start talking to kids about being mindful of their choices when they're in preschool, it will be so much easier for them to apply those skills when they're 12 and 13 and facing those other challenges.
It'll just be what is normal for them, you know, in the same way that if you introduce an iPhone to a baby, the tablet is the next step, and then it's the video game, you know, so like it's just what's normal. You know, it's not something that's foreign or like, I know when I first tried to do meditation in college, I was like, there's no way I can sit still that long. Or, you know, because people also think like with meditation that you're supposed to turn all your thoughts off. But that's not what meditation is about. You know, if you turn your thoughts off, your brain's not working. You know, and so like even, you know, dispelling those kinds of myths at an early age. And so, you know, our kids in public school have a lot of tests that they take, and it's caused a lot of anxiety. And so if they know that Well, if I, roll some lavender on my wrist, that'll help to reduce my stress. And so, yeah, I think introducing these strategies to kids, the younger, the better. I hear a lot of celebrities saying, they stay up all night, they don't sleep. Those things aren't healthy. And so even just making sure, like, getting enough sleep, is something that's happening for, our students and also staff is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we've covered so much, and there's so much more I want to talk to you about, but I do know, early in the show, I asked you, I said that I wanted you just to give us a little thumbnail about the different types of yoga that exist out there. So I want to make sure we do that before we end our conversation.
Okay. And so you'll find that, there are different gurus, primarily out of India, who are different styles of yoga, tend to be attributed to. The practices that I'm most familiar with is Baron Baptiste power yoga and then restorative yoga. And so with power yoga, it's a heated practice. There are over 50 different poses. It's sort of scripted, so you can kind of predict what's coming next. But really it's designed to push you to your edge. Also for you to just discover and find like your own inner strength and power. Again, it's a very heated practice, so it's, 90, 95 degrees in the room. And it can be a challenge. It can be not just a physical challenge, but a mental challenge. So that's the teacher training program that I participated in. The classes I teach are very different than that. I teach restorative yoga. So restorative yoga is mostly seated or laying down in some of the poses. You use a lot of props. So you have blocks and blankets and bolsters, and you really just sink into those poses and hold them. Your body cools down. It allows your muscles to relax in a different way because you're holding poses for a long time. Mm-hmm. So whereas you might do 40 different postures in Baron Baptiste style class, you might only do 6 in the same time frame in a restorative class. And it also has a little bit of a meditation component with that. And so right now, what I'm focused on is introducing those 2 styles into underserved communities and communities of color. They're very, very different practices. Restorative can be a little off-putting sometimes for people that have never taken a class like that. Mm-hmm. But I promise if you find a restorative class, you'll love it. It just can be a little, wait a minute, we're not standing up, we're not, pushing through these poses, because the idea is really to indulge yourself in the pose and not so much like stress your muscles or bones until you hurt. Yeah. Whereas with Baptiste, for sure, it's about, pushing yourself to your personal edge mentally and physically. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I wanted to mention is I've heard over the years from different folks from different churches who believe that yoga is somehow against their religion, or somehow opens you up to bad spirits or whatnot. That's just not the case. It's a case
not at all.
The people
and
who
my grandfather was a Baptist minister. Mm-hmm. I tell people all the time, and I've had parents bring that concern to me. They don't want their child doing yoga because it's some other religion, or it's not about a religion at all. For myself, I've never felt closer to God than when I was meditating, because the Bible speaks about meditation, mm-hmm. speaks about Jesus meditating, mm-hmm. But also it allows me to sort of quiet my heart and focus. Mm-hmm. And what I do with that time and where I go with that time is my own personal choice.
Exactly. Yeah. The other thing we hear in the news around yoga is that there have been some gurus who've been abusive, and you're going to find that in anywhere you mm-hmm. go. There are teachers, there are police officers, there are clergy, there are yoga masters who
Absolutely.
Take
mm-hmm.
advantage. And if that's the case, get help.
Absolutely.
Say something about it.
And listen to your body. Mm-hmm. If someone is trying to offer you an assist, which is, me placing my hands on you to help you deepen a pose or to provide you support, and that doesn't feel okay, or you feel like, I'm not really okay with this, I don't like my neck being touched, or that's okay. Mm-hmm. You can decline assist altogether, or that specific one. No one has the right to touch you inappropriately or to make you feel uncomfortable in any space, including yoga.
Absolutely. Well, we definitely want folks to check out Breathe, Baby Breathe, and also Mindfulness Room. But I also want to give you a chance to give people, again, just a little introduction to Rethinking Resiliency, your website.
So with Rethinking Resiliency, if you go on the website, you'll see our mission statement. We go all over the country doing workshops to let communities know about ACE, the Adverse Childhood Experience Study. Also brain development and self-care, and best practices for, the classroom to make them trauma informed. And so, we presented a little bit of everywhere to all kinds of communities. Although all of my teaching experience primarily has been in urban education. I grew up in a suburb, 15 minutes north of Richmond, where I've continued to do some consulting in cultural competency and trauma as well. So, we tailor our workshops to the community and school needs and, do book workshops for kids and all kinds of stuff. So I'm really excited to see what 2020 brings, not just from my author side, but also with, working with school divisions.
Well, I'm really excited, and I really appreciate the time that you spent speaking to us today.
Thank you so much.
Understanding that our kids, that we can help our kids become more mindful, take advantage of the brain science that we're starting to understand to help them make changes in their life, to make choices, to make positive changes in their life, to help them live more mindful and intentional lives, I think is so very important. And it's what we've been talking about here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast, just helping kids feel loved and valued and mindful of what's going on in their lives.
Thank you.
We've been speaking to the author of Breathe, Baby Breathe, Amanda Lynch. Amanda, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Please be sure to join us in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We'll be welcoming back our Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson. She'll be here to tell us all about STEAM Team 2020. You don't want to miss it. That's the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. If you are the author of a fantastic children's book, we would love to have you as a guest on the show. Being a guest, it's fun, it's easy, and it gives you the chance to tell thousands of people about your fantastic children's book. All you need to do is go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the contact button at the bottom of the page. Let us know about your great books. We will let you know the next easy step. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so very, very wonderful. Of course, we want to thank our guest, Amanda Lynch. Be sure to check out Breathe, Baby Breathe. Also want to thank my sponsor, Vooks.com. It really is a great service. Vooks, VOOKS.com. We love it. Also want to thank my amazing producer, Fatima Khan. Be sure to check out her blog at our website, readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. And, of course, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And, as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking through the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast